The fight may not be over for those Iranian sanctions. One GOP presidential candidate says our president is breaking the law, so private companies should not lift one sanction.
Any bank that listens to this president and releases billions to an international terrorist like the Ayatollah Khomeini will face billions of dollars in civil liability and litigation.
Well, some here agree the free market should keep all sanctions in place, no matter what. Are they right? Hi, everyone. I'm Brenda Butner. This is Bulls and Bears, and here are our Bulls and Bears this week. Gary B. Smith, Jonas Max Ferris, John Layfield, along with Ashley Pratt and Chuck Rocha. Welcome to everybody. Okay, Gary B., our public officials failed to do it. So now you say private companies should keep the sanctions against Iran. Why?
Absolutely, Brenda, because for one reason, in this case, I think it's just good business. Look, we're all going to agree capitalists will go to where the money is, unless it's bad business. You know, if you strike a deal with a terrorist, or in this case, I call them a scorpion, they're always going to revert to what they do best, and that's sting. We saw that in Venezuela, as a matter of fact, when Exxon tried to do business there, all for the sake of cash. And what happens was Hugo Chavez nationalized Exxon's assets there. If a private company is smart, they're not going to do business with Iran for that exact reason. You're dealing with the devil, and the best way to deal with the devil is not deal at all. Cut off their source of funds, which they, need the free market for, and be done with it. I think Ted Cruz is right in this case.
Well, that's very interesting, Gary. Be it an answer I didn't expect from you. And Jonas, you actually say that asset seizures are questionable in the first place from a free market company and country, and that this might not necessarily be the way to go.
This whole thing is flip-flopped into the absurd, Republican free market people are not supposed to be for sanctions. Seizing a sovereign country's wealth is not a free market move. Decreeing what banks can and can't do business there. Look, in a real free market, the government would have no say in whether a bank does banking business with the Ayatollahs or whoever they want to do business with. That's a free market. Real libertarians like Ron Paul are not for any of this garbage. In fact, Democrats have always been behind some of the bigger sanctions that didn't work in the past. Japan, before they attacked us because they had no oil. Carter put it on the Soviets with the grain embargo, which Reagan had to lift and said it wasn't working. Recently, Obama with Syria. How's those sanctions working out? That place is a bigger mess than before. They don't work. They're not a free market. That is why it doesn't work, because then black markets form, and all the stuff you read about in economics classes is what builds when you have this artificial impact on a real free market. So get out, have a free market with Iran. I know we hate them, but it will actually have a better outcome than sanctions.
Well, Ashley, sanctions did work for a while, and they were putting pressure on the economy in Iran. If the free market decides we're not going there, would that effectively put the Iran deal to bed?
Well, look, the problem right now is this Iran deal gives Iran exactly what they want. It gives them more than $100 billion in sanctions relief, and that's going to, extremely improve their economy and breathe new life into it. And that's exactly what we don't want. It makes it a problem. That's why sanctions were there in the first place, and that's why we need to do it as a check on their power. And that is a huge, huge problem right now when we look at them possibly, achieving nuclear status here. And that is, again, a huge problem for our national security, a huge economic problem, but with those sanctions in place, they were crippled. And that's the need for the sanctions in the first place. And if we put them there and keep them in check, then we can actually have checks on Iran, which is what we need in order to be more secure.
Chuck, this is going to be the decision of individual companies, perhaps of individual banks. Do you think they're going to make that decision, and should they?
I don't think they should. I think we have one commander-in-chief. I think there's been a deal that's been negotiated. I think there are state legislators that are trying to pass laws where it makes it where these banks don't have to do it. They need to read the Constitution. It would be unconstitutional for them not to do this. I think that there was a group of people that got together to pass a deal to try to keep Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. And I know that it didn't end the way they wanted to, but you can't take your football and go home. And you've got to be able to be a part of the process. And I think that they're going to have to do this.
Okay, John, good deal, bad deal, whatever you think. The issue is, do you think that the free market can make a play here and actually do something about this deal?
Yes and no. I think they can to a degree. Look, when CVS decided that we don't want to sell cigarettes anymore, that's the idea of a private company making a decision. What Gary B is talking about is correct. You're going to have certain private companies that come along and say, we don't want to do business with Iran because it is a bad deal. Look, the Cardin-Coker agreement is something that Ted Cruz talks about was violated by the president. And that is true. It says you have to disclose everything. There were two side deals that IAEA and Iran made that were not disclosed. But look, even if you go back to Congress, you got 60 days. They're going to vote on it again. The president's going to veto that. You still got the same deal. The toothpaste is out of the tube at this point. This is a horrible deal. But to tell companies to do the role of government, I think, is a gross overstep. If a free market wants to not do business with Iran, that is their business. I think that is good business. But it should not be decided by a government or by anybody else about what free markets should do as far as Iran.
And Gary B., oil companies are chomping at the bit to get in there. Tell John why he's wrong.
Well, fortunately, I'm a few thousand miles away from John, so I can't tell him why he's wrong. No, John, look, John, as always, makes some good points. I guess I'm viewing it, a few weeks ago, Brenda, on this show, we talked about companies like Facebook and Twitter stepping up to block terrorist content. They were supposed to do that to, help the government because it was the right thing to do. In my opinion, this is still the same thing. Look, I know as a capitalist, the oil companies are chomping. You're right, exactly, to get to that cash there and do business with Iran. But the right thing to do and good business is not to deal with the devil. Businesses make those choices all the time. That's not government mandate. That's just good business.
Jonas, good business?
But then you should like what's going on because the sanctions are interfering with companies' ability to make that decision whether they should or shouldn't do business in Iran or with whoever. The government's decreeing, like we are with Russia now, you cannot sell cheese to Russia. You cannot. Those are government rules interfering with the free market. So how is this not a move towards a more free market solution?
But government always interferes with the free market. All I'm asking is the companies deal best with what they have in place. If there's sanctions in place, they should be able to deal with them, good or bad.
But why can't you just said the companies can decide to do business or not? We don't need the government telling them they can't. Is that what the takeaway?
Yes. We're in violent agreement, if you will.
Okay,
all
good.
I'm saying is the companies should voluntarily make that choice, and that would help stop
Don't be on
Iran.
Carter's side of sanctions.
I don't think we see Gary B. anywhere near Carter. But Chuck,
I think that when we put this deal together, there was a group of people to try to do what's best for America out there. When you have American companies trying to, I'm going to go back to what John just said about it's a role of government to do that. Private business should run their own private business. If they want to not do this piece, then they should go in there and do that piece. But I don't think that it's good for America.
is that what you're saying, John?
Yeah, it is. I think private enterprise, look, if they want to deal with the devil, that is their business. I don't think it's good business. I don't want to deal with a company that's dealing with Iran. But the government made this decision. Look, we have screwed up the Middle East, almost coming up on a 100th anniversary right now of Sykes-Picot during World War I. We've continued to screw up the Middle East. This was a terrible decision. It was a unilateral decision. It was as bad as it possibly could be. But that if you do something, say like Cuba, if you have Cuba's embargo has been lifted. Are you going to tell American and Delta, say, listen, you can't fly there, but any other foreign-based carrier can fly there? All you're going to have is companies put subsidiaries in the EU or somewhere else and still do business with Iran. It should be up to the free market. If you want to do business with the devil, go ahead. But you're going to suffer the repercussions from people like me and Gary B. that don't want that done.
Okay, last word. Good debate, guys. And Cavuto on Business in about 20 minutes from now. Hey, Neil, what do you got?
Hey, Brenda, voting in favor of the bad guys? Why our enemies are looking at Congress and the United Nations and saying, hey, well, thanks, guys. Plus, some of these guys want tax hikes. Time for the entire tax code to just take a hike. We'll see you at the bottom of the hour.
You absolutely will. We can't wait. But up here first, one of the next stops on Congress's agenda, voting to increase your share of this. But is it time to stop raising it and start cutting it?